you're using the coordinate grid, you're using velocity, you're using friction, you're using all these variables, things that they're learning that now all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's why we needed to know that stuff. And so that's where the disengaged to engaged student really can start to change, is because now they really are realizing, oh, there's a reason that this is important. Now I have a purpose for learning this stuff. And so it is a little bit of a swap.
So the immediate application makes them better students in school, even though this is an after-school program.
Absolutely.
Welcome to the Voices United in Education podcast. Each week, we showcase the teachers, administrators, and community members who go the extra mile to contribute to the success of every student in Escambia County. You'll meet the real people behind the titles and learn about the amazing resources to support every student's success. If you're listening to this podcast, chances are you've lived long enough to experience at least one economic downturn. Now, on top of our heavy mental load and keeping up with unprecedented newsfeed updates, are aliens invading yet? We again all have job security on our minds. The last thing we want to do is worry about job security for our kids. My next guest is the owner-operator of an after-school program designed to help with just that. Yes, an after-school program, as in fun. It's called Code Ninjas, where kids learn to do things like build apps, websites, and video games. She decided to bring the franchise to Pensacola after her son showed interest in how things work while they were still stationed in Texas. The experience not only left them knowing how to code, but he also went from being a good but disengaged student to an engaged and excited student. Today, she's going to share why coding matters, what it is, and who it's for. Gulf Coast local military spouse, STEM supporter, JoDawn Brown. Thanks for being here.
Absolutely. I'm so glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. So are you a code ninja?
I am a code ninja, but my background is definitely not coding. My husband is the coder in the family, but my background is the education. And but really where it came from, really came from being a parent and seeing my son go through the process and really go from, like you said, a disengaged but good student to all of a sudden being engaged and really understanding why we're learning that stuff in school, that there's actually a reason that it's important. And then just seeing him really blossom in an environment where he was being encouraged and supported by kids that were like him and also had great mentors that were high school and college students that were really, that step ahead, that really gave him that role model to see that there is so much to STEM and coding and the world is really his for the taking.
I think that's the hardest thing for parents when they have kids who are really smart but they just don't care. It's like, how do you get your kid to care?
Right. And he just came out of the womb that way. And because that was not my background, I really didn't know what to do with him. And when I saw Code Ninjas as an opportunity for him to be able to grow and foster, then it was like, oh, well, of course, this completely makes sense. And it's just been fantastic. And now it's come full circle. And now he gets to be a sensei and really give back and do the exact same thing for the younger kids in our group.
Wow, that's so cool. Okay, this is totally new territory for me because for those of us, you and I for sure, right, who grew up analog, coding is super niche. It's definitely at least in my mind, has been for people who wear black hoodies and sit in their mom's basement, geeked out on Mountain Dew.
Right.
So I have a feeling that view is a little bit out of date. So tell me, why is coding important?
Well, coding is really the backbone of everything that we do. We just don't realize it. So, if you have ever gone into an Excel spreadsheet and said equals A1 plus B1 and told Excel basically to add that equation for you so that you didn't have to add all those columns and cells, you have basically coded. Coding is really just telling a computer or an app or your Apple TV to do something that you want it to do. You just have to talk to it a little differently than you talk to humans. And so really it is the way that we're going. There's no surprise. You've got the AI, you've got ChatGPT. We're going to get to a point where we're either going to tell a computer what to do or a computer is going to tell us what to do, which really it's scary and alarming a little bit, but there's a lot of things we can do to really make sure that we are preparing the next generation for what is to come, even though we don't really know what that is yet.
So would coding be a part of smart cars?
Absolutely. I mean, you have to tell the computer what to do, and the computer really has to kind of think on how to respond to different situations.
Because I have always thought of computer building and coding as separate things, but from what you're saying now, they are not separate things.
Not necessarily. I mean, there's the connection between the hardware and the software. And I mean, if you essentially go into your Apple TV and pick on Netflix and you choose a particular show, that's a physical response that you're doing with the remote to make a selection. That's called an event, like pick on Netflix and then choose this. But then if you've noticed after all those shows that you may have binge watched over the last, especially during COVID time, now all of a sudden you have those suggestions of shows that they think that you might enjoy. And that's the software piece of it.
Okay, so that also made me think of music because I don't watch a lot of television.
Yeah, absolutely. Same thing with like music when like Spotify decides that, let's put this playlist together based on what she's already listening to.
Okay, so algorithms.
Yes.
The first time I ever heard about an algorithm was for Pandora, which I don't know if that's even that popular of a listening platform anymore, but I'm probably the worst person or maybe the best, depending on how you look at it, to conduct this conversation because I'm so behind in this area. So for kids specifically, what do you think they gain by learning coding?
Well, let's just kind of step back for just a second. So if we think about where technology has come from, depending on how old the listeners are, they will probably remember a time where we had an original iPhone. That was just 15 years ago. Netflix didn't stream. We didn't have Pinterest. Like, how did we seriously plan a menu without Pinterest? Right?
It was tough.
Yeah. And we'd go to dinner and we'd have to wait for the little buzzers and we could only be like so many feet away. All of that technology has really happened in the last 15 years. But it's so much a part of what we do that we forget there was a time when we didn't have those things. Our kids, they don't know any different. They just follow the blue line on Google to get where they go. But if you think about kids that are especially early elementary school, 15 years from them is graduation, maybe some tech school, maybe some college. Fast forward to how quickly the technology now changes, we have no idea what's coming. But we do know there's going to be tech in every field. It could be agriculture, it could be entertainment, it could be medicine. Every field is going to have a level of technology, and coding is that piece that really is that second language that our kids are going to need to have at least a basic understanding, because every field that we're going to go into, we're going to have to be able to control some sort of tech device. If that's an app, if that's a website, if it's a database, or if it's a drone, who knows what that's going to be. And so that is that language piece that will set people apart from either having it or not having it. And that's really what we're trying to do, is really, one, give them the opportunity to realize that computer programming is not just staring at a computer at zeros and ones with the black hoodie in the basement, that no matter what they go into, there's some kind of tech stuff that's really cool. They just don't know about it yet because they have those images in their head. And we want to break that stereotype to realize that anybody, male, female, black, white, brown, whatever, has the same equal opportunity to really make that difference no matter what field they go into.
So you're saying this isn't a competitive edge. This is like learning to read.
Absolutely. I mean, we learn to read and write and we teach kids science and history because we kind of have that understanding that just to be a normal, good human, we just need to have that general knowledge. Really, coding and STEM exposure needs to be that next general subject that they're going to need when they get older.
So for parents concerned about excessive screen time, right?
Yes.
How do you navigate that with the Code Ninja program? Because now that you've explained how elementary and fundamental these skills are, I can see why they're important. But I can still kind of feel that internal struggle that maybe parents would be feeling about, I'm going to kick my kid outside with no shoes and make him go
Drink
play.
out of the water faucet.
Drink out of the water hose. Yeah, exactly. So how does that kind of come into play with, learning to code versus, I guess you would call it the life skill of having a healthy digital relationship?
Absolutely. And it is certainly something that we see a lot of parents come to us. As a parent myself, that was a huge problem for us. But what I needed to do was flip my mindset. It's not about the screen time. It's what we're doing on that screen time that matters. Because really anything can be out of balance in our life. It could be if we are not being social enough and we need to be around other people, or it could be a sport that we are just obsessed with. Technology and screen time, unfortunately, is not going to go anywhere. But what we want to do is really help kids to understand that you can actually be productive with that time. And so, yes, we teach coding through game design because you meet the kids where they are. They love to play video games, but let's get them creating their own video games, getting back to that creative, critical thinking skills, imagination, getting them back into that play that we've kind of gotten away from when they've just been consumed with watching video games and watching YouTube. And, again, we don't know what the future is going to hold for those jobs, but we know critical thinking and problem solving are going to be a part of that. And through coding, those are the skills, aside from actually doing the computer stuff, that they're gaining from learning how to code. And so we do teach them how to create their own video games, but we also have camps and activities where it's very hand-based. It's very tinkering. It's connecting the hardware to the software. It's robotics. And so we're not just sitting there staring at a computer as well, because we want them to realize that, okay, you want to turn in a killer presentation. Let me teach you some video editing skills. So yes, our camp says YouTuber, because every 8 and 9-year-old wants to be the next YouTube star, right?
It is so true.
But, those are some important skills. So meet them where they are and take that love and excitement and passion for YouTube. But let's teach them to do something with it, because now colleges are accepting YouTube channels basically as a portfolio.
What?
Yeah.
Are you serious?
It's crazy. Absolutely.
Which
Which
is
is
crazy.
Great for my son, who is not a strong writer. He's not a strong communicator in that way, but he has years of projects and activities and even some communication skills. He'll talk to his computer so much easier because he's in a more comfortable environment than if he's going to be standing in an interview format in a college interview process or a job interview process. Okay. And so when I say the wave of the future is completely changing, it's not just changing our jobs. It's the way we apply for colleges. It's the way we apply for jobs. And there's more to it than what we have always thought. And so those are skills that they're going to be able to utilize. And so we really do want to focus on the being productive with that technology rather than just staring at it.
So it sounds like you're saying it's not additional time, it's time that you're just swapping. Absolutely. So like if the kid spends 4 hours after school, oh my gosh, that sounds like so much. But if
That's actually not that long for some of these kids,
God.
Unfortunately.
Okay, I can't even think about that right now. So if they spend 4 hours after school scrolling,
yes,
you would substitute that for creating and learning but still in that digital way that is engaging and preferable for them.
Absolutely.
So we're basically tricking them.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, great.
And they're doing reading, they're doing math, they're doing those skills that we're not going to be able to sit there and say, okay, we want you to spend an extra few minutes on Khan Academy or whatever it is, focusing on, the coordinate grid, well, anytime you're programming a game, you're using the coordinate grid. You're using velocity, you're using friction, you're using all these variables, things that they're learning that now all of a sudden it's like, oh, that's why we needed to know that stuff. And so that's where the disengaged to engaged student really can start to change, is because now they really are realizing, oh, there's a reason that this is important. Now I have a purpose for learning this stuff. And so yeah, it is a little bit of a swap.
So the immediate application makes them better students in school, even though this is an after-school program.
Absolutely.
That is really fascinating. What about the difference between learning this stuff, just like speaking of YouTube, on YouTube for free versus in a setting like Code Ninjas? Yeah,
absolutely. So we, as a platform, really, we had to go to a digital world during COVID. And there are plenty of online coding schools. But all the research, both psychology and education-wise, really says that people that are in an environment where they are with people that are supporting and really like-minded can be a lot more productive. It's easier, and they will work on harder tasks for longer because they have that support. We really, as humans, are really meant to be with other people. And when we're in an environment with other people like us working together for a common process, right? We really can do more and learn more, and it sinks in a lot more.
Your background is higher education.
Yes.
Do you see coding being a prerequisite, much like 2 years of language were when I was graduating high school?
I would absolutely love to see that. If I could, have enough bandwidth to get on a platform and lobby for that, I absolutely would, because it really is going to become that just basic skill that we really need to be able to provide for our kids. Dell just recently did some research, and 65 to 80% of the jobs that are going to be created by 2030, which is really like a heartbeat away, right, haven't even been created yet.
Oh, weird.
So because again, 15 years ago, right, we didn't have all these tech jobs and drone jobs. I mean, we had some, but it's just growing so exponentially that it really does need to kind of become that basis. And really, kids, whenever they find something that they enjoy, they want to spend more time doing it. And unfortunately, there's not a lot of outlets for STEM and coding. And about 80% of people in that world really got their excitement and their foster through after school programming, because all of a sudden then they could spend some time really diving into it.
So who, age-wise, is Code Ninja appropriate for?
So we start as young as 5.
5?
Yeah. So we've got 5 to 7-year-olds, which are what we call our juniors, and then from 8 to 14. Now, we're not going to kick anyone out at 14, if they're still enjoying the program, but it's typically where we find, most kids are at. So we go all the way from 5 to 14.
How does the program work?
So they come in, and our juniors are very project and play, because you think kindergarten, first grade, second grade, right? And so they're learning concepts through projects and play. So, algorithms and sequencing may be a really challenging concept for a kindergartner, but when they have to do an origami project and follow the sequential steps, otherwise they're not going to get the frog or the rocket or whatever it is, then they realize that, okay, we have to follow certain steps. Or when we're working with if-then statements, we do pull in a lot of literacy, and we've got some great books. So we've got a little girl, and she's planting a garden. And so if it rains, then we have to do this. Or if it's sunny and we don't have rain, what do we need to do? And so it really is lots of hands-on. A lot of those kids don't have the typing or the mouse skills. So we're working on some of those just basic skills as well. They come in a whiz on an iPad and a touch screen, but the other stuff still needs some practice. And so we do some typing and some mouse skills. And then once we kind of make that switch to what we call our Create program, they're working on a belt system very similar to martial arts. So they start at white belt, and they're working through projects, activities, We even kind of give them some broken code that they have to then problem solve to kind of prove. It's almost like a prove yourself, where then it's like, okay, you really, because we want them to really understand these concepts, not just check off the box so that I can move up to the next level. Because as you go through coding, just like if you don't know adding, subtracting, and multiplying, algebra and geometry and all those things become much, much harder. And so we want to make sure they understand those basic concepts. And so they go through that belt system, and by the time they're black belt, they've created, coded, and designed their own video game that they can sell in an app store, use for a college application, job application, all those types of things.
Wow. So if a parent has, let's say, a 13-year-old, is it too late?
It's not. It's absolutely not too late.
What about 14?
No, we do. We have 13 and 14-year-olds in there, and we really try and find meet them where they're at, and we definitely want to expose them to other things. So kids will typically come in for an hour at a time. They're going to get some of those typing, because even some of our older kids need to be a little bit more practice on the typing. And you can't really be an effective coder if you're not an accurate typer, because then you're going to get errors, and then you're going to have to go through all these lines of code, and it's not very fun. They want to actually do the stuff, not fix the errors. And then they're also going to get about 20 minutes of STEM time at the end of their session. So they're going to type, they're going to do some coding, and then they're going to get some STEM time. And it's usually very hands-on, problem solving, logic, games, robotics, just to really foster and expose them, because like you have that image of kind of what a computer programmer does. A lot of these kids don't understand, oh, I could still go into medicine and still be techie. Just because I like math doesn't mean I have to be a math teacher or stare at statistics all day. Math is used in all kinds of these types of things. And so we're also there just to expose them to what could potentially be.
That's a really good point, because even if you're in a certain industry, and let's say you spend, 10, 15 years in that industry as an adult, that doesn't necessarily, people change careers, right? And it is more difficult to change careers traditionally if you're in it longer and have no other skill sets. So I could kind of see, and I'm starting to connect the dots, is if you have this skill set in your back pocket and you're in a career and you're like, gosh, this is, I keep coming across this one certain problem all the time. If only I could invent something that would solve this problem and allow me a financial bridge to do something different, or just retire early.
Exactly.
I mean, that's always nice, right? Okay, that's pretty cool. So how would a parent know if Code Ninja is right for their kid?
Really just try it out. We put our kids in soccer and baseball and dance and gymnastics because we don't know what sport they're going to like, right? And so the non-sport after school activities are kind of the same way. We're going to have some kids that are athletic. We're going to have kids that aren't very athletic. My son loves to run. He's on the track team. He does all that kind of stuff, but he loves this STEM and robotic stuff too. And not every, just like we have all these different types of kids in the classroom, there's going to be an activity that every kid, one kid's going to be drawn to math. One kid's going to be drawn to writing or drama. And so, just really trying it out is the best way.
So as we wrap up, can you tell parents what they can do to kind of start that process? Where you're located? What are the hours? How would it work for Escambia County families?
Absolutely. So we are Pensacola Boulevard and 9 Mile Road. So technically 3 West 9 Mile Road, but we're right there on the corner of Pensacola Boulevard and 9 Mile and then Old Palafox. And they can go online and they can book a tour. And what that means is the kids get to come in, do a 30-minute game building session. So they'll really get to kind of see what it's like and they have 30 minutes and they will actually build a game from start to finish.
Oh, that's cool.
And then the part that they love the most is they get to bring it out to mom or dad and say, look what I did. And mom and dad have to play it. And they usually love to make it hard enough that they cannot beat the game. And so, that's really the best way for them to come in and really get a taste of it. And then I can, of course, explain how the program works. And then we also have summer camps, parents' night out, all those types of things. Really, anytime school's out of session, we are having some sort of day camp or something like that. So we've got after school. We also work with the scouting groups, field trip locations. We really can do lots of things. We've done a few STEM nights at some schools. So we can come to them or they can come to us.
And what's your website?
Our website, www.codenninja.com. codeninjas.com/FL hyphen Pensacola.
Oh, that's not that
Yeah.
bad.
So
okay.
you can just do a Google search for Code Ninjas Pensacola, and that's a lot easier.
I mean, that is how I found you. So
Exactly.
we'll stick with
don't
that.
we Google everything now?
We Google everything. Yes.
Right.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. This has been awesome.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to subscribe and share. Voices United in Education is a production of Escambia County Public Schools.